On that particular Saturday that changed my life forever, I was 23 years old and still single. Then, my best friend's new girlfriend invited me to a party. The party was planned to be a Dutch treat and would take place in the evening. When I rang the doorbell of the house where the event was being held, I was in for a surprise. The door was opened by Jessica Moore. Although Jessica was pretty, I didn't like her at all, and I hardly ever socialized with her. She seemed arrogant and condescending to us blue-collar guys. It was incomprehensible because she herself worked in her parents' shoe store, which was no cause for pride. She had some sort of relationship with Martin Oliver, the spoiled son of a wealthy man from the same affluent part of our town. I couldn't stand Martin ever since he'd gotten hold of my girlfriend using Daddy's money and a new Mercedes. He humiliated me by spreading pictures of their liaison and then dumped her. Martin's father even published some angry letters in our local paper after someone poured a can of paint off on the new Mercedes. Martin blamed me, but quickly calmed down when some of the guys in my neighborhood let him know how this could turn out for him. When I arrived at the party, Jessica looked with obvious disgust at the bottle of Viet 69. It is, he goes, Scotch whiskey I had brought and said with disdain, "So you drink that stuff to make yourself look like a real man?" I replied, "No, but it's all I had." She continued, "But you cannot drink it, can you?" To end the conversation, I offered her something I was sure she would never accept. "Of course I can. If I have better things to do, there's a great band playing at Park Hall tonight. If you come dancing with me, I'll be sober and I'll drive." Jessica looked at me again in disgust, but noticing that most of the people in the room were silently looking at us, she smiled and said, "My pleasure." The guests applauded as she took my bottle, set it on the table, and said, "Come on, darling." Jessica smiled, disappeared as soon as we were out the door, and she asked sharply, "Why the hell did you put on this show for me? Look on the bright side. You're spending a sober Saturday night with a nice guy." "What good guy? You're a crazy nerd." We didn't talk again until we got to my car. I cursed myself for being chatty, which had led to this stupid date with an arrogant bitch I didn't like. I knew I was going to get a lot of questions tomorrow, so I decided to keep my word and headed to the dance hall. Jessica must have read my mind because she barked, "Don't you dick around? This is your idea, so shut up and drive." She turned on the radio and listened to music for about 10 or 15 minutes, then turned to me and asked, "You didn't expect me to agree to this so-called date, did you?" "No." She smiled sweetly, and I noted how beautiful she was when she smiled and said, "But I agreed to it." "Yes, you did, and we're going. Let's try to forget the hard feelings and have a nice evening." Jessica smiled and asked, "Are you serious?" "Yes, deal." We continued our easy conversation until we got to the dance floor. Our first dance was quick, and to my surprise, Jessica turned out to be a great dancer. She herself offered to stay on the dance floor for 2 more tunes before heading out for appetizers. Over the course of the evening, I danced with different girls, but occasionally returned to Jessica, who never sat down once the entire evening. She saved the last dance for me and hugged me tightly during it. On the way home, Jessica fell asleep almost immediately and only woke up when we got back to our town. I woke her up to see where she lived. When we stopped outside her apartment, she said, "Thanks for a nice evening. I'll call you later." That was the end of it. The evening was pleasant, even for me. I didn't expect her to actually call, so I was pleasantly surprised when Jessica called me Thursday night. She suggested we go to the dance hall for the following Saturday since a popular band was scheduled to perform there. I agreed to drive her, and before hanging up, she mentioned that she might be taking her friend Monica with her. Saturday night, I arrived at Jessica's apartment almost on time, and she came out a few minutes later. To my surprise, she got into the back seat, and then Martin Oliver settled in next to her. Of course, I wasn't about to endure such humiliation. I turned off the engine, walked around the car, opened the back door on Martin's side, and pulled him out so that he fell to the ground. Jessica ducked down, but a strange expression appeared on her face as I yelled, "This car is not designed to haul trash. Martin was obviously pretty drunk because it took him a while to get up and try to attack me. I stepped aside so his swings flew past me and sent him back to the ground with only one punch. I then dragged him over to the bench at the entrance to Jessica's house and sat him down there. Jessica remained silent while I dealt with Martin. Walking back to the car, I told her, "Get in the front seat." Not expecting her to obey, I was surprised when she actually sat in the front and said, "I'm sorry." She told me that Monica had wanted to come with us, but was sick with the flu. Martin showed up uninvited at Jessica's house with a bottle of wine. She only had one glass, and Martin emptied the whole bottle. He assured her that there was no more animosity between us and asked permission to go to the dance hall with us. She added that Martin had once been something of a boyfriend to her, but now he was just a friend. Jessica and I spent a pleasant evening at the dance hall, and this time she stayed awake. On the way home, when we stopped outside her apartment, she said she wasn't in the mood for anything more, but if I put those thoughts aside, I could come over for a cup of tea and a sandwich. I agreed. Jessica had a nice one-bedroom apartment with expensive furniture. Apparently her parents paid her a decent salary. She had bought 2 large prawn sandwiches in advance. Before I left her around 3 o'clock on Sunday morning, we agreed to have lunch together. Later that day, during lunch at a small restaurant, she told me the latest news about Martin. It turned out that after we left him on the bench, he cooked Kino Hai Wao Chu. He went to the pub for another drink, and then took a cab to the dance hall to get back at me. He wasn't allowed inside because he was very intoxicated and got into an argument and fight with the man at the ticket booth. A police patrol happened to be nearby, and after the altercation he was taken to the station for the night. A few weeks later, Martin lost his driver's license for a year because he was caught speeding several times. The high fines for Saturday nights added to the speeding tickets became too much for the authorities. Within a few months, he had become an alcoholic and sometimes joined the local team, these unemployed drunks who gathered in the park for drinking parties. Jessica and I were surprised at how well we got along with each other and had almost identical opinions on many things. She was a beautiful girl, and my goal was to sleep with her as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Jessica took her time in this matter. She later admitted that she already had a crush on me, but was afraid that I would use her as a trophy to bruise Martin and then dump her. Of course, that wasn't true because I had warm feelings for her too and had no intention of leaving her. It was Jessica's parents who had created the situation where we couldn't resist the temptation. They had planned a week's vacation in Madeira, but her mother's divorced sister had been in a car accident, and Jessica's mother chose to stay home to help her. Her father didn't care if the trip fell through, so they gave the tickets to Jessica. She sold one of them to me for half price, and the travel agency agreed to change the reservation. Madeira is a Portuguese island in the Atlantic Ocean, about a 5-hour flight from Scandinavia. It is known for its Madeira wine and exotic flowers. She flew out early and arrived around 1 p.m. at an excellent 5-star hotel in a hotel zone just outside of Funchal, the island's capital. We had a very early morning, so we decided to have a siesta in the afternoon. In Latin American countries, siesta doesn't necessarily mean just sleeping, and Jessica and I had other, much more interesting plans once we were in bed. She asked me, "Do you love me?" I looked her straight in the eye and answered honestly, "Yes, I do. Jessica, I love you very much." She smiled and said, "I love you too." It was like the dam bursting. Our strong feelings took over everything else, and our only goal was to get each other naked as quickly as possible, which didn't take long. We had dinner at the hotel, and after dinner, before falling asleep after a long but wonderful day, we indulged in passion again. In the morning, after some quick sex, we got into the rental car and set off to explore this romantic island. While we had a good time by the pool, we also traveled extensively to see all the sights, such as the forgotten until recently isolated valleys. In Funchal, we visited the famous wine house where a man condemned to death was once drowned. in a huge barrel of Madeira wine at his last wish. One day, we took a long hike through a Levada irrigation system in the mountains. Riding the infamous donkey trail on a steep mountainside was an unusual experience that made Jessica go quite pale. We spent our last night on the island at Casino Madeira. First, we had a delicious dinner and saw a show at their famous restaurant, then did a little gambling, almost paying off the evening, and then had fun at the casino nightclub. We didn't talk much about the future during the vacation, but on the last night at the hotel, we started discussing what we would do at home. Jessica suggested that I move in with her to save on my apartment rent. I agreed. A year later, we bought a house, and another year later, we were married. Almost a year after we were married, we had a son, Chris, and another 15 months later, a daughter, Ida. We were a regular family now, and things were going well between Jessica and me, except for some minor arguments. Time passed, and we still loved each other as we celebrated our 10th anniversary with a big party. Many of our friends were already divorced, and some had even remarried. Jessica's best friend Monica had 2 broken marriages and was now bragging that she had met the love of her life online. But it all went downhill just a couple months after our big anniversary party. It didn't happen all of a sudden, but I knew Jessica so well that I noticed a slight change in her behavior towards me almost immediately. Of course, I asked her if she was sick, if something was bothering her, if I had done something wrong or should have acted differently. She denied all the changes and tried to convince me that everything was fine. As our relationship continued to slowly cool, I couldn't help but think that if several of her girlfriends were cheating on their husbands, perhaps Jessica had decided to try it too. But my observations offered no clues. She didn't dress more sexy. She didn't use extra makeup. She didn't work overtime. She didn't plan extra bachelorette parties. She didn't make strange phone calls, nothing out of the ordinary at all. I figured she must be pretty darn smart to avoid all the usual signs of cheating. With a heavy heart, I decided that for the first time since we first met, I would start looking for signs of cheating in her personal belongings. I searched her drawers looking for new sexy lingerie, but found nothing. Nothing was hidden in the laundry basket either. I checked her credit card accounts and found nothing. There was nothing odd about the phone bills. I checked her laptop for secret email accounts and found nothing. I checked her car and found nothing, even the meter left under surveillance. The only thing left to check was her cell phone, and I got my chance when she left it in the charger one night while going bowling. Sneaking the phone away to my workshop in the basement, I thought, my dear Jessica, it's now or never that I will get proof of your deception. I read all the text messages, listened to all the voicemails, and wrote down all the unknown phone numbers for outgoing and incoming calls. I even checked some pictures she took with the camera in her phone. I then noted that she had not sent any photos to other phones or emails and had not received any. After checking the supposed numbers online, I was 100% sure there was nothing of interest in Jessica's phone, which meant I could see only 2 possible explanations for her new, cool behavior toward me in bed. 1. She was cheating, but she was doing it in such devious ways that I would never find any proof. 2nd, she wasn't cheating on me, but for some unknown reason, she had lost love for me and was so tired of me that she was probably going to leave me before she started a relationship with someone else. I wanted to know the truth, and the next time she refused to have sex with me, I asked, "What did I do wrong to lose your love?" "Bullshit. Did I say I didn't love you?" She retorted. "Did you?" I asked in response. "Of course I love you, but why the hell can't you accept that I'm tired? Do you have any plans or decisions about our future that I should know about?" I asked, trying to clear the air. "No, but if there are, I'll let you know. Please let me sleep. I'm tired. I'll say it to you to fads." She wasn't giving me any hints about our lost love, so I decided to calm down and give her a month to get our relationship back on track. If our problems remained or worsened, I had to figure it out and try other solutions. 2 weeks later, life gave me a real surprise. 8 boys from our town went to the capital to watch our national soccer team draw with Northern Ireland in a qualifying match for the European Championships to be held in Austria and Switzerland the following year. Since the result was not as good as we expected, we went to a bar to have a few drinks and soothe our disappointment. There I met Aurora quite by chance. Aurora was a very beautiful woman in her 30s, stylishly dressed with a bright smile that immediately lifted my spirits. She was alone in this bar, and I happened to take the vacant stool next to her. We started making small talk, and after a while we were already talking like old friends. Sure enough, I noticed the 2 gold rings on her ring finger, and as I guessed from her accent, she told me she was from the northern part of the country. She owned a souvenir store, had spent 2 days in the capital at a trade show, and had a plane ticket booked for noon the next day. I told her about myself and why I was in this bar, which she already understood. She noticed my wedding ring, but I was a little surprised when she asked how long I had been married and if I was still happy. I told her the truth. No, I'm not happy and I expect to be dumped, but I don't know the reasons why my wife might be about to do that. Aurora replied that there is confusion in her marriage too. Talking about serious matters in this noisy bar was difficult, so Aurora suggested we move to the piano bar at her hotel, 2 blocks away. I agreed, but once we got there, we found that it was also crowded, so I didn't mind going to her room and getting something to drink from the minibar. We got our drinks, and Aurora started telling me about her marriage, which was in deep crisis. She had accidentally caught her husband with one of her best friends at the cottage. As a result, she immediately put the cottage up for sale and the day before had received a message from a broker offering a much higher price than she had expected. She still loved her husband, who was a good father to their 2 children, and had no intention of divorcing him, but she wanted to teach him an unforgettable lesson. When I finished my story about how my wife had suddenly and inexplicably lost all interest in having sex with me, I looked Aurora straight in the eye, took her hand, and said softly, "I guess it must be some kind of destiny that we 2 unfortunate people have met. I have a feeling it must mean something." She pressed herself against me and whispered, "That's exactly how I feel, and I thank God that I have met a man who really understands my situation." I kissed her, and the intensity of her response surprised me. I became aroused and was overcome with a happy feeling that I had won everything and lost nothing. We got up from the couch and began to slowly undress each other. Aurora had a beautiful body, and I kissed her in all the sensitive places until she moaned with pleasure. She then got off the bed and turned off almost all the lights, so it was almost dark. After a quick shower, we found 2 small bottles of sparkling wine in the minibar and sat around. For a while, it was a great night, and the clock showed it was already 4:30 when I got to the hotel and snuck into my bed without waking up the buddy I shared a double room with. Sure, my friends had noticed I had disappeared from the bar the previous night, teased me at breakfast, and asked me stupid questions on the ride home. But I denied that I'd been doing anything but talking, and I was sure none of my friends would say anything to Jessica. At home, everything was the same. Jessica didn't even seem to notice that I'd been gone for almost 2 days. Only the kids were happy to see me back. On Tuesday, I had to stay at work until 6:30, and when I got home, I was in for a surprise. Jessica met me at the door in a short black skirt, silky top, and dark stockings. She told me dinner would be ready in the dining room when I showered. Our dining room, separated by an archway from the living room, was only used on special occasions as we usually preferred to dine in the kitchen. I can't deny that I was suspicious of such an unusual dinner on a normal Tuesday. I had a strange premonition that this was the last dinner before I was abandoned, but I decided to wait and see. As we were eating sweet cake for dessert, Jessica said, "Do you want to know why we're having a celebration today?" Both the kids and I answered yes. She continued, "I'm fired. My parents sold the shoe store today, and the new owner doesn't want me. I'll quit my job on Saturday, get my 6 months paycheck, and be free to do whatever I want." Our son Chris asked, "You mean Grandpa fired you?" "He's cool. Jessica replied, "Not really. We found a better solution." Her Ida asked, "Did you find a new job, or are you going to stay home?" Jessica replied, "No, I don't have any plans yet. I wanted to tell you first." I didn't say anything, just started coughing, and Jessica gave me a strange look, but remained silent until the kids left the table. Then she told me that her parents had met an old friend who had convinced them to invest in a vacation project in southern Spain. They decided to retire and move there. Jessica recognized that they got a good price for the stores, but thought the project was risky. She resisted, but lost, and a dinner was arranged to celebrate her freedom from her parents. In every way, Jessica realized that our marriage was not at its best and promised to do everything she could to get it back on track. I asked, "Was your damn shoe store the only reason you neglected me, or were you having an affair? You acted like a cheater after our anniversary." She got angry and screamed, "Hell no, haven't I had enough trouble with my parents?" I replied, "Why didn't you tell me about the problems with the damn store? It was a family affair, and we wanted to keep it in the family." I had never been so angry with her. A family affair? Aren't I part of the family? What do you think of me? Am I just a lodger? You lied to me when I asked about problems. Why didn't you tell me the truth? Don't you trust me?" She sobbed. "Of course I do, but I didn't want to bother you with my problems. You neglected me, and I thought you were cheating with some creep. Do you think it would be fun to plan a divorce if it turned out to be true?" Jessica started crying loudly, and both of our children came back yelling for us to stop arguing. Without saying anything, she rushed into the bedroom. The dinner to celebrate the new beginning of our marriage ended in a complete fiasco. The only positive was that she clearly wasn't cheating on me, but if she had told me about her problems, it would have saved me a lot of heartache. It was painful to know that my wife thought of me as a stranger or a lodger rather than a member of the family. Wednesday was a quiet day in our house, but on Thursday night, when Jessica got home very late after work, things hit the fan again. Now, Jessica was on a rampage. As soon as she entered the house, she started yelling, "You fucking bastard," accusing me of cheating. But what the hell did you do yourself? I didn't accuse you. I only said you acted like a cheating bastard. Now she was crying and sobbing. "How could you do this to me? I'm sorry. It was a terrible mistake because I thought you intended to leave me. What do you think I'm going to do now? Please don't make any decisions until you calm down. How could you? I'm sorry. But how could you do this to me? You neglected me, and I thought you wanted to get rid of me. It was a terrible mistake that I am very sorry for. Do you love her? Have you called her since then?" "No. I only love you and no one else." "Can I see your cell phone?" "Yes." I handed her my cell phone, and she searched it thoroughly. I had nothing to hide, and she handed it back to me. Then she asked me, "Was she a prostitute? Did you pay for her? Don't you know about diseases?" I replied, "No. She was not a prostitute, and I did not pay anything. She is married, and she was upset because her husband cheated on her. I was sad because I thought you intended to leave me." We talked most of the time and came to the conclusion that keeping our marriages together would be the best solution for both of us. Are you suggesting I do what she did? No, because she found her husband and her best friend in action at their summer house. She sold the cottage, but she never got over what she saw there. Please remember that nothing would have happened if you had been honest with me about your problems. I'm sorry for what I did, but I was sure you wanted to leave me. You're going to sleep in the spare room, and the only thing I want to hear from you is a short answer if I ask you anything. Is that clear?" "Yes, it is. And please remember that no matter how this sad story ends, I will always love you. A man who loves his wife doesn't cheat on her. Please shut up." The evening passed in silence, but when dinner was ready, she told me this, and to my great relief didn't stutter about divorce. It would have been a long and difficult road to fixing our marriage if she hadn't left me. She called me on Friday afternoon to say she was going to go to the pub with a work colleague, and ended the conversation before I could say anything. I did the necessary chores at home and made dinner for the kids. Then I got a call from Harry Brown, the owner of a prefab factory, saying that he and his family had been customers of Jessica's shoe store for many years and were impressed with how well she took care of the customers. When he found out she had to quit, he wanted to offer her a job with his company because she was exactly the person he needed for customer service to handle the complaints and misunderstandings he was getting from his customers. He gave me his phone number and told me that she could call him until 22 that evening. Around 21, I heard the sound of a car in the driveway, and within seconds Jessica was in the house, but not alone. With her was a good-looking man, probably a few years younger than me. In his hand, he was holding a cassette tape of a DVD movie, clearly pornographic. Jessica introduced him as Nick, led him into our living room, and told him they would be watching the movie and didn't want to be disturbed. I told Jessica about Harry Brown's call about work and that he expected her to call him as soon as she got home. Apparently she knew Brown because she took the cordless phone from the kitchen and retired to the bedroom to be alone when the call came in. I walked into the living room and Nick was sitting on the two-seater couch waiting for Jessica. I explained to him, Jessica and I are having serious marriage problems and she invited you here to humiliate me. But I'm not going to tolerate that in my house, so I'm asking you to politely leave immediately. Please do so. Nick remained seated and replied, Jessica invited me, and what can you do if I refuse? To leave? Nothing. Don't blame me if I forget to open the window when I kick you out. Despite that, he stayed put and even replied with a smile, You're a funny guy, really. Funny. Determined to make a move, I hit him hard in the face, first with my right fist and then with my left fist. He lost his balance but didn't fight back as I pulled him off the couch and carried him out of the house. Taking one last kick, I told him to get off my property before I lost my patience. He left without making any more comments. While waiting for Jessica, I turned out the lights in the room and turned on the movie. When she walked in, she didn't notice me on the couch and exclaimed, I got the job. Now we can tease my damn husband. She then realized that the person on the couch was me and shrieked, Where's Nick? What did you do? I just told him the truth, that we were in trouble, and asked him to leave. She reiterated her displeasure and asked, Turn that movie off and tell me the truth. I told you the truth. He didn't want to leave, and I convinced him. As you remember, I don't put up with bullshit, and I never will. I don't know who this Nick guy is or why he came here. A week of silence passed between us. The following Saturday was Jessica's last day of work, and she spent the evening with her parents. We didn't speak again until the Saturday night party we were invited to. Before we left the house, she made her conditions. Don't pretend we're doing well, stay away from me, and don't try to socialize. Don't drink so we can get back in a cab. I agreed. At the party, I stayed away from her and refrained from dancing because of my injured knee. Instead, I tried to find out which of the 7 friends who were with me at the match had told Jessica that I hadn't spent the night in my bed. One of the young guests, upon learning that I was Jessica Hara's husband, told me that she was Nick's sister. Her older sister, who worked with Jessica in a shoe store, suggested that Nick play the role of Jessica's lover. Neither Nick's wife nor Nick himself had any ill feelings towards me and took it all as a joke. Jessica was more outspoken than usual and flirted with the guys on the dance floor, but I didn't care until she came up to me and expressed her desire to end the evening. We walked home in silence, and she thanked me for honoring the terms of our agreement. I replied that I would always love her, no matter what happened. The next morning after breakfast, when the children had left to play, she thanked me again and asked me if I held a grudge against her for her behavior the previous night. I replied, I love you and I don't blame you for it. I am sorry for my actions and I hope you will forgive me. I don't know what to say to that because you showed love in a very strange way. I regret it and I will regret it for the rest of my life. She then talked about her new job and I marveled at how well she was being paid for it. She didn't say anything about divorce, which gave me a faint hope of saving our marriage. But I knew it would take time. Over the next few days, there was a noticeable improvement in the relationship between Jessica and me. She started talking a little more than usual and even asked me a few questions about things that had happened over the past week that she had not previously been interested in. When I informed Jessica on Wednesday night that I would have to work on Friday installing important equipment, she didn't mind. She told me her plans for Friday, including going to a bachelorette party with Monica and two other girls, and asked her parents to keep the kids overnight. Friday morning, she told me that her parents had agreed to take over babysitting. We didn't start work until after the plant closed Friday at 16 o'clock, as several other plants had to be moved to make room for the new equipment. By 7 o'clock in the evening, it was discovered that the foundation had not been built for the wrong model of machine that was required, and the installation was stalled. When I finally got home around midnight, I couldn't sleep because of worries about the job. I heard a car in the driveway and Jessica talking to someone in front of the house. They went into the kitchen and I, protective of my home, cautiously opened the door to hear their conversation. Jessica looked sober as she thanked the man for the ride. He replied, "It's my pleasure to help such a fine woman." She offered him coffee, to which he replied, "Let's wait with the coffee. It will taste better afterward." Jessica became alarmed, asking, "After what?" "What do you mean?" He replied, "Don't pretend you left John and you want a real man tonight, don't you?" Now she raised her voice. "He's not a wimp. I love him and I will never leave him. I don't care who he is because tonight you're mine. Stop this stupid talk or I'll tell John. Yes, you can tell John how easily I divorced you because that's exactly what I'm going to tell him if you don't shut up and start taking your clothes off." Now she was yelling, "Get out of my house or I'll call the police." He raised his voice, shouting, "Don't you dare even try, you damned bitch. You teased me last Saturday and today is payback time. Do as I tell you or would you rather get it the hard way?" I had heard enough, and when he grabbed her and tried to kiss her, I quickly rushed up and struck him with my first hard blow, which was a complete surprise. After that, my subsequent blows to his face were a simple duel without much resistance on his part. I now realized that the damned rapist was Tommy Lundgren, an old friend of ours. He and his wife Karina had been invited to many parties at our house over the years. I had known him for years as a nice guy and couldn't understand why he had turned into such an animal when he decided Jessica was easy prey. I dragged him to the door, threw him out of the house, and promised that if he didn't get off my property within 20 seconds, serious things were going to happen. Back in the house, I hugged my crying wife and tried to comfort her. After a while, when she had calmed down a bit, I called Karina and told her the truth about what had happened in our house. She wanted to talk to Jessica, who told her that when she and Monica couldn't get a cab, they had met Tommy at a hot dog stand and he offered to drive them home if she would give him a cup of coffee, which she agreed to because she knew him well and always thought he was a good guy. Tommy took Monica to her house first and was a good guy until Jessica and him ended up in my kitchen. Apparently Karina was sick of him by now because she told me what a damn asshole he had been to her for the last year, even though he always avoided punching her in the face. When he hit her, I made coffee and we went into the living room to have a frank talk about our problems. First, I told her why I was home that night and not working. Jessica told me that she intended to get free of him, rush into the bathroom, lock the door, and use the phone extension cord to call me. If Tommy tried to break the door down, she would call our neighbor Kent and the police. If he broke the door down before she called for help, she intended to spray him in the eye with hairspray. I agreed with her that she had planned it right. Then we started talking about the problems in our marriage. Jessica told me that she regretted like hell that she hadn't told me about her problems at the shoe store. She went on to tell me that Monica was the one who told her about my cheating. One of my soccer friends, she didn't know who exactly, told his wife. The latter told her best friend, who told Monica. Jessica was shocked and started screaming that she was going to kick me out of the house. But Monica managed to calm her down, and she agreed not to do anything she would regret. Later, neither of us had any reason to doubt that Monica had played a big role in saving our marriage because she convinced Jessica to let me stay in our house and not talk about divorce until she found out if her love for me was strong enough to forgive me and save our marriage. Jessica looked me straight in the eye when she told me that she never had any intention of cheating for revenge and that she had decided to forgive me after the first sleepless night, alone in our bedroom. But she was so sick of me that she couldn't pretend that everything was fine in our relationship, even though it was far from it. The drama with Nick was just a game and a stupid mistake suggested by his sister, who worked at the shoe store. Jessica didn't know him and had given up on the idea, but she had been talked into acting out this little drama to teach me a lesson. She warned Nick that I was no wimp, and he promised to stop the game if I got really angry. He didn't, and his wife often teased him about his black eye because she thought it was his own fault. After Nick nor his wife held a grudge against Jessica and me, Jessica said she promised to invite Nick and his wife over for dinner as soon as we settled our marital problems. We talked until morning, and then I followed her to our marital bed where we cuddled together and fell asleep. When we woke up at almost 11 o'clock on Saturday, we had the best sex of our lives, at least since the week we spent in Madeira. We both promised never to cheat on each other. It was a great day for me, although I had to abandon all plans to celebrate it on Saturday night because I had to get back to installing the car. Of course, the following weekend we had a very romantic celebration. A week after the incident, Karina filed for divorce and Tommy left town. Jessica kept her word and invited Nick and his wife Camille over for dinner. He was a very easygoing guy, and she was a very sweet girl with a good sense of humor and a great storyteller. We all laughed out loud when she told us about her reaction when poor Nick came home with a black eye. Jessica and I have never talked about my cheating since that night when we talked for hours and resolved our issues. We are happy as newlyweds, and I have my loving wife back.